What's up, y'all, and welcome back to 10-Minute Pitch. I know it's been such a long time, where I'll be reviewing a show and trying to pitch, or anti-pitch depending on how good it is, in 10 minutes or less. Afterwards, I'll give the show a score out of 10 based on my grading criteria, and that score will determine if we'll continue to watch the show. If you guys want to request a show for me to review, be sure to leave it in the comments down below. This week, we'll be reviewing Orel, released in 2005. I'm your host, Flux Guys. Make sure you subscribe, and without further ado, time starts now. Orel follow. That is going to be a tongue twister for the rest of this video. Oh my god. Orel follows the story of Orel Puppington, a sweet but misguided and easily influenced young Christian boy. Him and his family live in Morrilton, a town full of devout Christians who only practice the workings of the Lord. Don't be late for the arm's length dance this evening, yeah?
No touchy!
The show is non-episodic, having a pretty linear plot every episode. Orel gains a piece of advice from an adult figure, whether that be a camp counselor, his parents, or more often than not, his egregious church reverend. Seriously, sit in on one of his sermons and tell me that this guy is spreading the good faith.
What is the finger of salvation that can be thrust into the gag reflex of my soul? And do not have the means to purchase toupees, for they are poor. Nevertheless, when you take part in activities like egging or TPing my house, I should warn you that it will be counted as a sin. Number 1, gold like God made the sun. Number 2, good Lord help me go poo. Number 3, the devil sets my sperm free.
Anyway, Orel will learn something simple like wasting money is bad, or masturbation is a sin, you should be loyal to your friends, all basic lessons for a child his age. But through misinterpretation or being willfully misguided by his elders, Orel manages to find loopholes that, in his eyes, still honor the ways of the Lord. Before long, Orel manages to be in over his head and gets reprimanded by his father, who ends the episode with giving Orel a lesson to keep. The show doesn't have a set time period, but it feels like a typical 50s, 60s suburban neighborhood. Everyone knows each other for some reason, there's people protesting outside of movie theaters, payphones on every corner, no black characters from what I remember.
I'd say that God wants different people to be separated from us, Orel. That's why he put Europe all the way over wherever he put it.
That's right. Speaking of which, here we go!
Oh, boy!
It screams white picket fence culture. The first season doesn't deviate from the plot structure, making every 10-minute episode go by pretty quickly. Sometimes it works, the story manages to skim by and get a couple jokes off before the episode signs off, but there were a couple instances where it felt like the plot was dragging its feet. In a show like this where they don't have long to tell their story, you don't really have room for filler moments. That might just be a result of the era that this show was made in though. Orel was made in 2005 and it shows. The humor is slow-paced and very dry. It reminds me of Daria and Clone High. All the adults in the world are very cynical and there's not a lot of outright insane or loud moments like you see with a lot of modern cartoons. It's surprisingly modest for an adult animated comedy, but more on that later. Aside from Orel, there's plenty of other characters that give us a sense of what living in Morrilton is like. There's Miss Censordoll, the librarian who we can see burning some of my favorite books of all time. I can't believe the pigs were evil the whole time, bro, like wow. We also have Doey, Orel's best friend who often gets dragged into Orel's hijinks to becoming a better Christian. I could do an entire case study on Orel's parents, the two biggest stereotypes of the 60s era. You have the father Clay, a pipe-smoking, day-drinking, white-collar working, robe-wearing figurehead of the house, who's one of the main people feeding Orel misguided information in the name of keeping him Christian. Things like women are happiest when they're cooking and cleaning, telling Orel that being different is wrong when referring to a girl who has piercings, being more upset at Orel leaving his friends than Orel beating up kids for being gay, something that Orel himself points out.
Led you to hurting other people.
Yeah, those boys in the forest.
No, I'm talking about your 3 real friends.
You really think that's what bothered me?
Are you questioning me, young man?
He's one of the people Orel looks up to the most, and yet he's one of the most insufferable characters in the show. And I don't mean that in the sense that he's a badly written character. He's a very believable Christian father. He literally has a book for the sex talk that has different lives for each age. And Orel's mother, Blauberta, isn't much better. She doesn't have as much screen time as Clay, but she's usually seen either cooking or cleaning, even cleaning her cleaning products. She's more concerned with the outside world's perception of her parenting as opposed to actually trying to be a good parent. Clay and Blauberta's marriage and family life seems pretty textbook and perfect in the beginning, but it quickly becomes apparent by the season finale that things are not working out. Yeah, really not working out. Now, animation-wise, it's easy to compare the show to Robot Chicken. They were both released in the same year, they both have the same facial features and mouth animations, they both aired on Adult Swim, and after watching the pilot, you'd think that this was a spin-off of a Robot Chicken sketch with how nonsensical it is. But despite that, I think the show has enough of an identity to separate itself from Robot Chicken. I do kind of wish the pilot episode was replaced with episode 7, It seems a lot tamer to start off the show with Orel doing something simple like meeting a friend with bad intentions, instead of summoning zombies from the dead via Necronomicon on day 1. While I do admit it was hilarious to see zombie Christians saying grace before tearing civilians' brains out.
God's good, let me thank him for our food.
This episode is an outlier to me as it's the only one that breaks the realm of reality the show maintains after the pilot. Yeah, somehow Orel gets his hands on crack and gets his entire school addicted to his piss, and that's more believable than Orel raising spirits from the dead. Sue me, brother, it ain't real. There's not much to comment on with the voice acting and sound design. It feels very vintage with all the music cues being very whimsical. It reminds me of those old Christmas movies like Rudolph and Santa Claus is Coming to Town. It's been so long since these have came out that it almost feels like lost media. The style of the show just gives me such nostalgia even though I've never seen it before. Orel's voice actor is perfectly cast as well. She gives him the life and innocence that I don't think anyone else could have pulled off. I found out while I was doing research for this video that she also did Sandy Cheeks from SpongeBob, which makes some of Orel's wackier lines even more hilarious.
Look, Samson, crack!
Despite having some pretty vicious quotables, Orel is by far my favorite character in the show. Even though he manages to do a lot of immoral things throughout the season, you always get the sense that he never means any harm and he truly makes his decisions out of a good and honest headspace. Which leads me to the best part of the show by far, the entertainment and comedy. I said that the show reminds me of Daria because everyone in the town is very cynical and one-track minded towards being a Christian. And the first time I watched the show, I was watching with the expectation of Moral Orel being a comedy. But after seeing the finale and rewatching the show, I realized it's a lot more depressing than I initially realized. In episode 9, Orel attempts to become more adult by studying the adults around him. Him and Doey sneak into a bar and watch adults, well, being themselves. And God, is it depressing.
How was your day?
It was a day.
What does that mean? Why don't you talk to me like a person?
I am.
Amazing!
Comedy genius. This culminates into Orel thinking that drinking is the best way to become an adult, with him quickly becoming a strung-out alcoholic. At first it's kind of funny, he's doing stereotypical grumpy old man things, but then his mind starts aging him, he starts looking all gray and gloomy, he's asking girls to stay the night with him.
Just for tonight, I need to be held. I need to be with someone. It doesn't matter who. I want to go and skip.
It's moments like these that remind you, hey, this show is supposed to be funny, but at the same time, it dips you back into the inner tragedy that all these suppressed people are facing. Despite how much Orel messes up, he takes it on the chin. He makes awful, disgusting, repentable choices, and yet he's the most optimistic and cheerful person in the whole town. He doesn't see a problem with two gay kids innocently kissing in a forest until his corrupted friend says otherwise. He attempts to break all 10 commandments so that he can become the true God-fearing Christian that he wants to be. He gives his hard-earned money to a crack fiend and smokes crack because his dad says wasting things is immoral. In any other adult show, these things will be played for laughs. You see something outlandish happening and then the next scene plays and it's done with. Out of sight, out of mind. But with Moral Orel, that is the basis of the entire show. Underneath a town that attempts to preach the good word of God is a population of adultery committing, narcissistic, lonely, repressed townsfolk who are just barely scraping along. And I appreciate how the show makes a commentary on Christianity without really making a case as to if it's bad or not. I'm not a super religious guy, but I get the root of the belief is spreading good onto others for the sake of being good. No rewards or gifts in exchange, just a simple devotion to a God and spreading goodness and harmony and yada yada yada. The show is directly speaking on hypocritical Christians or those who don't practice what they preach. It's not really a Christianity bad, atheism good, strongly taking one side kind of case. One of the more warm characters in Orel's life, Stephanie, is lambasted by the community for her piercings and employment at a sex shop. And after meeting Orel, they share a sweet moment where he compares her to the other maternal figures in his life and reflects on how she's way more nurturing than they are. And she buries these feelings down with more piercings, Jesus Christ. A lot of Clay's dialogue struck a nerve with me as well, especially with how he views his love for his family.
You sure are right, Dad.
Well, I suppose that's why they call me Dad. And not Mom.
But I think the scene that hit me the most was with Orel's principal. In episode 2, when Orel asks why masturbation is wrong, the principal gives this answer.
Why? There are some things that are burned so deep into a person's subconscious that you forget just why they're there. You only know that they've scarred you in such a horrible and personal way that they must be right.
And that's how a lot of misinformation is given to Orel. He doesn't really get an explanation beyond that's how things are and that's the way things will always be. Which is a sad way to live, dude. The final episode sees the perfect family falling apart with, spoiler warning, us finding out that Shapey, Orel's younger brother, isn't Clay's child. I wonder who the father is. While Orel is interpreting his parents' fight as Shaby becoming the second coming of Christ in typical Orel fashion, the two parents get into a massive fight that ends in divorce. They cut back and forth between Orel's sweet fantasies and his parents having a real sensitive moment with no music, nothing but two people having a falling out. Afterwards, we get a scene with Blaberta, and I don't know how to explain it, but seeing this expressionless and restless puppet cry just broke me into the dark reality of how miserable this show is. And that's time, so let's take a look at the stats. With a premise that's simple but leaves room for plenty of creativity, a wonderfully depressed main cast, nostalgic animation and voice acting, and plenty of emotional layers to dissect, More Orel is probably the biggest catfish of a show I've ever seen. I was expecting funny, crazy Christian adventures, not divorce, alcoholism, and depression. I'll also count up the episode average and give my favorite episode of the season. Hands down, the Christmas episode is my favorite. By the time I got to episode 9, I knew I wanted to rewatch the show again to see all the themes I missed, but episode 10 really drove home that More Orel is way more than it makes out to be. Your average family comedy, this is not. This rounds out our final score to be a sweet 8.1 out of 10. It's a beautifully complex show that I'm gonna definitely check out more of. And I wasn't kidding about that case study. Let me know if you guys have watched the show or you're planning on watching the show, if you'd be interested in me doing a video on Orel's parents, because I've seen the rest of the show up to this point, and yeah, there'd definitely be a lot to talk about. But that's enough out of me. Hopefully you guys liked and enjoyed this video. Subscribe if you're new, and that's all I got. Enjoy the rest of y'all day.